This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, stocks in the developing world were set to clock their biggest gain since April today. That, of course, is on the back of improving economic indicators and, of course, more global stimulus coming out. But, of course, investors are still cautious due to a surge in COVID-19 cases across the world. South Africa's JSE was firmer as data out of China boosted investor sentiment today, while, of course, the rising number of COVID-19 infections globally and tension between the US and China continued to be of concern to investors. Now, also coming up on today's show, Egypt's annual inflation drops to its lowest level in 14 years. China's manufacturing activity continues to expand in July. And Benin craftsmen keeping tradition of bronze casting alive. Well, we kick off tonight's show in Egypt, where the inflation rate has dropped to the lowest level in 14 years. The headline inflation rate has now dropped a level lower than the targeted Central Bank of Egypt's rate of 9% for the end of 2020. Well, CGTN's Yasser Akim takes a look at how the government has achieved this, as well as its effects on Egyptian citizens.
Headline inflation in the North African nation has been gradually dropping over the last few years, but sliding down to 5.7% in 2019-2020 is seen as an unprecedented success in a long time. The government says its ability to control food prices has been the driving force behind the result.
It was an extensive four-year economic reform policy. Among other things, it included establishing new industries and factories to raise local production and exports. The same with agricultural projects. The state then started to reduce imports to save hard currency and strengthen the Egyptian pound. Naturally, prices of food and basic necessities began to drop gradually, pulling inflation down.
The drop in inflation definitely has had a positive impact on consumers.
With lower prices and inflation rates, this allows consumers to buy more food and goods with the same income, so as if his income was increased. This creates a sense of security that you can afford to buy food and basic necessities. Your family is safe economically and socially, and this leads to stability in the community.
Experts say what makes the achievement even more special is that it comes in the midst of the challenges of the corona crisis. The global pandemic has led to increasing inflation rates in many countries. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, let's head to Kenya now, where the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport has resumed operations after a 4-month shutdown due to COVID-19. Now, authorities say they have new measures in place to ensure that passengers and staff are safe. So what exactly can one expect at the airport right now? Well, Robert Nagila finds out.
First, authorities say for passengers departing from Kenya,
check on the protocols that they are required to fulfill in their destination countries.
Your temperature will be recorded and your travel documents verified before accessing the terminal. So as soon as you walk into the terminal, there's a security check. Now, in recent years, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport has enhanced its security. So I'm sure that's my microphone, but yeah, you good? Thank you. So expect a thorough security check and patience is required.
We are encouraging them to come to the airport at least 3 hours before their flight.
This is mainly due to the new measures in place against COVID-19. Authorities have put sanitation points throughout the airport. There are at least 300 automated sanitation points in the facility.
You can actually use the kiosks for check-in as opposed to, interacting with the check-in officials. But of course, you can also interact with them at the check-in counters, but there is a screen that protects you or separates you from them. We are urging people to check in online.
Physical distancing signs are clearly displayed throughout the airport, and a face mask is mandatory. Once check-in is complete, it's a short distance to the immigration area. So once you're done with immigration, there's another security check that awaits you. So the good thing about Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, it's one of the more modern airports across the continent, and they've tried to make movement much, much easier. Once you're through with security, you can access restaurants, duty-free shops, and your boarding gate, where seats are clearly spaced out. However, expect random security checks throughout the airport. For those arriving at the airport,
COVID certificate.
Your temperature will be recorded and one must fill a questionnaire for contact tracing purposes. A curfew is in force, so if you leave the airport between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m., keep your boarding pass and passport nearby if stopped by police. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Now, neighboring Somalia has also reopened its skies to incoming international flights after a shutdown back in March due to COVID-19. The move is part of several other steps to ease restrictions and boost its economy. Now, Somalia's Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation, Mohamed Abdullahi Salat, says all necessary measures have been taken to avoid the further spread of the disease. Incoming travelers are expected to have a negative COVID-19 certificate. The test should show that it was done within 96 hours prior to traveling.
Close to 5 months now, and we cannot keep the country closed for so long if there's no scientific reasons. Since the numbers are down, the neighboring countries, the international destinations, most of them are open now with some restrictions. We were prompted by Ministry of Health and others to reconsider the suspension of flights. So now we have considered looking at from the economic point of view, as well as from the health point of view, the situations are prompting us to reconsider our position, and we did.
The biggest challenge of the restriction was an economic decline. It was not political. We now expect ease since the country resumed its international flights. We hope that the price of the commodities will go down. We congratulate the government on the step to reopen international flights in Somalia. The country can recover from the economic losses it encountered. Of course, that was a life-saving mission.
Let's now take a look at today's corporate headlines. South Africa's Shoprite Holdings has decided to pull out of its Nigerian subsidiary. Now, the South African retailer has been struggling in Nigeria in recent years, partly because of increased competition and government policies such as border closures and local production of commodities. Now, Africa's top supermarkets shares shot up by over 11% following the announcement. And still in South Africa, Telkom's operator Telkom has launched a life insurance business that it says will initially sell funeral insurance. Now, the firm is also seeking to expand its mobile payment apps into online marketplaces to leverage the network and customer base. Partly state-owned, Telkom has been diversifying its income streams beyond the fixed-line business, which now contributes just over 20% to group revenue. And HSBC has warned that its bad debt charges could blow past a previous estimate to $13 billion in 2020. Now, the bank says its profits more than halved as the coronavirus pandemic hammered its retail and corporate customers worldwide. HSBC reported a pre-tax profit of $4.32 billion for the first 6 months this year. That's lower than the $5.67 billion average of analysts' forecasts. And a rebranded London riverboat service has been launched with a fleet of 20 boats set to transport passengers along the River Thames. The ride-hailing app Uber has teamed up with Thames Clipper to rebrand the service used by commuters and visitors in the capital. Users will be able to buy tickets on the Uber app alongside existing methods as residents seek alternatives to trains and buses. That's amid the coronavirus outbreak. And that is a look at our corporate headlines. Well, we are heading into a short break now, still coming up on the show. We'll be looking at how small and medium enterprises are surviving the coronavirus pandemic. And Nigeria's central bank issues a $41.2 million credit facility to its maize farmers.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay, we'll head up now.
Beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Uche Okoronkwo.
Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Welcome back. Now, small and medium enterprises are resilient and optimistic about the future in spite of the overwhelming impact the COVID-19 pandemic has had on their businesses. That is according to a recent report put together by Facebook, the World Bank, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Now, the Future of Business survey engaged with SMEs in over 50 nations and regions in May 2020 to understand their experiences and need for support. They found that between January and May 2020, 26% of SMEs had closed. In some nations, more than 50% were forced to close shop. Now, consumer-focused sectors have been hit the hardest. 54% of them were tourism agencies and 47% from the hospitality sector. The report also highlighted an urgent need for financial support such as salary subsidies, tax deferrals, and of course access to loans and credit. Well, let's get the details on that report. We're joined now by Janet Kemboi. She's Facebook's communications manager for Eastern Africa. Great to have you with us on the show today, Janet. Now, of course, we know small businesses, they tend to be the most vulnerable to an economic crisis like we're seeing now. You surveyed over 30,000 SMEs in 50 nations. What did your research reveal about how badly SMEs, especially in the region, have been impacted so far?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it certainly seems like Janet's audio has gone off there. We'll try to get her back later. But let's move on in the meantime to Egypt, where the country's automotive industry has survived the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. And that's thanks to the 50% year-on-year sales improvement it recorded in the first quarter. That, of course, helped the sector when motor vehicle sales sharply dropped in the second quarter due to the health crisis. Egypt has reported an overall increase of 22% in vehicle sales in the first 5 months of 2020. Well, here's CGTN's Adel El Merhoui with the details.
Until Egypt reported its first COVID-19 cases and began its lockdown on the 25th of March, business for the country's motor vehicle sellers was good. The automotive industry has recorded a 50% increase in sales in the first quarter compared to the first quarter of 2019. But when the pandemic hit, the automobile market crashed.
The government has taken many decisions which have made the slowdown worse. They announced freezing the registration for new and second-hand vehicles. The central bank decided to prohibit cash transactions for the automotive sector. That's in addition to the COVID-19 impact on Egyptian consumers, which have all joined to spiral down the automotive sector.
The first 2 months of the second quarter have seen the market record a 50% drop in sales. To keep afloat, manufacturers and traders had to be dynamic to cope with the changing market trends.
Because dealers want to attract buyers, they provide offers. Sometimes it has to do with post-sale services like maintenance offers. Some relatively cut cars' prices, especially for models that they have in stock. But for most Egyptians, buying a car is not among their priorities at this stage.
Big automotive dealers like Mercedes Egypt have even offered 2-year repayment packages with 0 interest charged on purchases of selected models. And while the US dollar has started gaining strength against the Egyptian pound, prices of some imported vehicles dropped while others remained the same. Overall, the Egyptian automotive industry is performing much better than expected, especially under the pandemic. And that's thanks to quarter one, which has seen significant increase year to year in sales, and that has pushed the numbers to stay high during the shutdown. The first 5 months of 2020 have registered sales of nearly 90,400 vehicles, compared to 74,000 in 2019, a 22% increase. If the market picks up by September, experts project an overall drop of 30% this year, a bump the industry could absorb. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Now, Ethiopians have been celebrating progress on the construction of the country's dam on the Blue Nile River. Sunday's celebration came after Ethiopian officials announced that the first stage of filling the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam's reservoirs has been achieved, and that's due to heavy rains. Now, tens of thousands of residents flooded the streets of the capital, Addis Ababa, to celebrate in an event that was dubbed One Voice for Our Dam.
Ethiopia's Deputy Prime Minister Demeke Mekonnen called on the public to rally behind the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and support the completion of its construction. Hashtags like It's My Dam, Ethiopian Nile Rights and God trended among Ethiopian social media users. And celebrations over the filling of the dam were not just in Ethiopia's capital of Addis Ababa. Similar events were also held in other cities in Ethiopia.
We came out here to celebrate the filling of our dam. I don't have words to explain to you how happy I am. We really support the government and I want to show our solidarity. So far we have used charcoal to bake our bread, but after this we will use electricity.
We are so excited for two reasons today. First, the most important is the filling of the Nile Dam. It is essential for us, and secondly, we're celebrating this together with our wedding.
Ethiopia says the dam will provide electricity to millions of its nearly 110 million citizens and help them out of poverty. Once completed, the dam would also make Ethiopia a major power exporter. Chaumuhono, CGTN.
And in Nigeria, the central bank has issued a $41.2 million credit facility to its maize farmers. This comes after the bank placed a ban on maize importation in order to boost local production. Here's Kelechi Emekalam with the details.
Another planting season for maize farmer Abubakar Sabitu. He has spent the past 2 decades cultivating maize, a staple food widely consumed in Nigeria. But lots of farmers like himself haven't enjoyed favorable yields and sales. Besides contending with imports, financing has been a major challenge. Now the Apex Bank's ban on maize importation and its $41.2 million credit facility to maize farmers would help boost production.
The challenges I face every farming season is access to fertilizer. Because every year we farm, we have to budget for fertilizer. But most years, there's always a hike in the price, and it affects our calculation due to the price differences. This makes us to always seek financial help, and in some cases, the fertilizer is not readily available.
If part of this money will be used to acquire tractors and some machines that will make our work easier and encourage us to do more, we will go a long way. If I was farming 1 hectare and now I have these inputs available, I can farm up to 10 hectares.
According to Nigeria's Bureau of Statistics, maize seed imports alone was over $4.6 million in the first quarter of 2019. And that's excluding other byproducts from maize running into millions of dollars. The Apex Bank hopes to stimulate economic recovery, safeguard rural livelihoods, and increase job opportunities affected by the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's the right step in the right direction. And don't forget, it's only for this season. You also go to have dry season farmers. There are also high exportable ones that we're already exporting, like sesame seed, shea butter, ginger. Those we are not even mentioned, but we are exporting those. So they require equal attention. So these ones are where Nigeria has significant comparative advantage compared to other African countries. And so we need to put resources behind those.
About 40,000 maize farmers will access the credit facility. Among other interventions, the funds would go into agro inputs like fertilizers, seeds, and agrochemicals. The farmers are expected to double their output this year, as well as provide 1.5 million metric tons of maize for animal feed. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, let's now go back to that Facebook report that, of course, surveyed over 30,000 SMEs worldwide following the pandemic. And once again, we've managed to get Janet Kemboi. She is Facebook's communications manager for Eastern Africa. Great to have you back with us, Janet. Now, as we asked before, what exactly did your research reveal about how badly SMEs, especially in the region, were impacted or have been impacted by this pandemic?
Yes, so thank you so much for having me. So what essentially the report revealed is that there's actually a worrying sign that we could be in a very long job crisis. About a third of the SMEs that we actually surveyed at the time reported that they had actually reduced their workforces. Of course, the tourism and the hospitality sectors, which are very, very important sectors for our region, literally were the hardest hit. We actually had about 54% of tourism agencies globally and 47% of SMBs in the hospitality sector reporting that they were actually closed at the time of the survey. Now, bringing this really closer home, Kenya is actually the one country that was most affected, when we did this study, because we did see the most significant dip in revenue generation with Kenyan businesses. About 75% of Kenyan SMBs on Facebook actually reported lower sales than they had last year. This is actually much higher than SMBs in Ghana and Nigeria, for instance, who only reported about 56 and 59% lower sales. Also, Kenya actually happened to be most affected as far as job losses were concerned due to COVID-19. 65% of operational SMBs on Facebook in Kenya actually reported that they had reduced the number of employees as a result of the pandemic. This was actually slightly higher than countries such as South Africa and Nigeria and Ghana, which essentially reported same figures but in the 40s. So it's really having an impact, and specifically for us here in Kenya.
Now, of course, this doesn't really paint a bright future, but the report also revealed that in Africa's key markets such as Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, a large number of SMEs still feel optimistic about the future. But tell us, what exactly did it reveal about the biggest challenges they will face going forward, even in their optimism?
Yeah, so actually what you've said is correct. We did find that a lot of the businesses in SSA were quite optimistic, and actually Nigeria was actually the most optimistic. I think about 75% of Nigerian businesses actually confirmed their optimism for the future. But one of the things that we found, and some of the essentially commonly foreseen challenges amongst most of these businesses, confirmed that about 47% confirmed that there's a lack of demand. So, they're still struggling. They're still struggling to find people who have demand for their products. We also had people who were confirming, low cash flow constraints. We actually had another 19% confirming that they were struggling to repay outstanding loans. So, SMBs are still confronting these ongoing challenges, and uncertainty will still linger on as we continue to grapple with the effects of the pandemic.
Well, in terms of solutions going forward, it seems like digital technologies will play a key role in, of course, SMEs adapting to this environment. So what exactly have you found in terms of solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what the report has shown so far, and what it has confirmed, is that a lot of businesses across the board are actually spending a lot of this time during the lockdown to essentially prepare themselves to reopen. So they're trying to find ways in which they can adapt their business models. How can they be able to develop an online presence? And I actually think that for our region in SSA, the only way that SMBs across SSA can survive the pandemic is actually to pivot to digital. I see this because, for example, in a country like Ireland, we found in the report that 65% of operational businesses on Facebook reported that they had actually made a lot of their sales. This is more than 25% of their sales, essentially from digital. And this is in the past month. If you look at a country like Kenya, it was significantly lower. We only had 46%, and even in Nigeria, only 43% of operational businesses reported that they had actually made sales online. So that actually gives us an opportunity to be able to upskill on our digital skills to be able to survive this pandemic.
Now, Facebook is a platform itself, and you say that you're going to take steps to help SMEs weather this storm and certainly help them recover. How so?
Absolutely. So I think I want to give a bit more perspective to this question. We actually have about 160 million businesses around the world who are either on Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp. Each and every month, they're trying to reach customers, sell and grow. And businesses are truly at the heartbeat of the Facebook community. And we established this very, very early on during this pandemic. And what we immediately did is that we actually created a business resource hub which is actually available to all businesses online. So if you went on facebook.com/business/resources, you can actually be able to find a hub that has a lot of advice, training, information, and actually a lot of tips also from healthcare experts. Now, in SSA, recently in June this year, we actually made our economic impact programs available virtually. And this is actually for free to equip SMEs across the continent with digital marketing skills to help them stay open, connected, helping them to acquire new customers to survive the challenges that have been brought by the pandemic. And actually very recently, just last month, we did identify, for instance, in Kenya, that the tourism and hospitality industry was actually the most hardest hit sector. And we quickly collaborated with, in partnership with the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. We launched Boost with Facebook for the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife in conjunction with one of our implementing partners called Wild International. And actually this program was aimed to equip Kenyan SMEs in the tourism and hospitality sector who have been affected by COVID-19 with essentially digital marketing skills. So how can they be able to boost their businesses on Facebook, on WhatsApp, and on Instagram? And we're continuing to see how we can be able to identify similar programs that we can be able to, of course, implement locally and also across the continent.
Well, we do have to leave it there, Janet, but many thanks for your insights today. That, of course, is Janet Kemboi. She's Facebook's communications manager for Eastern Africa. Well, we are heading into a short break now, but still to come. China's manufacturing activity continues to expand in July. And ByteDance is in talks with Microsoft for a possible TikTok sale.
Holding guns. Machine guns from police forces towards the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
The Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, a private survey released on Monday shows that China's manufacturing activity continues to expand in July. That echoes positive results from last week's official manufacturing survey. Here's CGTN's Guam Ching walking us through the details.
The Taixing Market Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index came in at 52.8 for July, marking its third straight month of expansion. It was also the fastest pace of growth in nearly a decade. The results beat expectations for a 51.3 reading, reinforcing views the Chinese economy is on a recovery trajectory. Now, looking at sub-indices, output and new orders both rose at their fastest rates in 9.5 years, supporting the higher PMI figure. Many companies cited greater client demand amid an ongoing recovery in market conditions. However, on the downside, the gauge for new export orders remained in contractionary territory for the 7th consecutive month in July. That was due to the impact of the overseas pandemic. Analysts say the uneven recovery pace shows the rebound was mainly driven by policy stimulus. That's because most of the strength in new orders was due to policy-driven domestic demand. Employment also remained weak. The sub-index for employment stayed in negative territory for the 7th consecutive month. That came as some companies laid off workers to reduce costs. The report also raised concerns of an uptick in inflationary pressure as input costs and output prices both rose at a faster clip. Looking ahead, the report says companies were generally confident that output will be higher than current levels in 12 months' time. The growth forecast was underpinned by expectations that economic activity and client demand will continue to recover from the pandemic. Guanxin, CGTN.
Well, let's turn our attention now to TikTok, the parent company of the Chinese video sharing app that, of course, U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to ban, says it's in talks now with another tech firm over a possible sale. Now, the CEO of Beijing-based ByteDance said in a letter to employees that the company was exploring all possibilities to resolve its intensifying confrontation with American regulators. Now, Zhang Yiming stressed that the company was private and willing to adopt more technical solutions in order to allay the concerns of the Americans. He also added that American investment regulators thought that ByteDance had to sell its U.S. operations. Meanwhile, TikTok boasts some 1 billion users around the world. The immediate losers of an American ban on the popular app would, of course, be social media influencers who, of course, post videos on TikTok to make a living. Here's CGTN's Toby Muse with more on that.
President Donald Trump's announcement that he wants to shut down access to TikTok in the United States has upset many Americans who spend hours on the app viewing and creating content. Ehi Omije is a prominent TikToker with thousands of followers.
Oh my gosh, I think initially it was just panic for a lot of people. I think for those of us who are at the top of creating, who make their money through TikTok, things like that, we're really scared. And also for like the smaller, larger creators like myself, I was upset about not being able to connect with my followers anymore, not being able to be that voice for them. So I think it was just like panic and like sadness.
TikTok has seen stunning success around the world and in the United States, capturing the attention of the highly sought-after teenage demographic and those in their early 20s. TikTok says it has 80 million active users in the US. The Trump administration says the app could be a security threat, having the potential to share users' information with the Chinese government. TikTok has denied this. For users like Ehi, he doesn't worry.
TikTok in general just has become a place of positivity. I think a lot of us use it to say how we feel, to connect with one another. So I don't think any of us feel unsafe. We keep going back to it for this place of just to lift up, to be better and to feel better.
Since Trump's threat on Friday, observers are wondering what comes next.
The TikTok app right now is, the banning of it is like one of those things, like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? There's obviously concern from users, and only time will really tell if A, it gets banned, and B, how does the general public react to this?
Kotak says there is more scrutiny now on all social media companies and how they use data of users. And because of TikTok's success with youngsters and ownership by a foreign company, the scrutiny is even more intense. Many TikTokers are thinking about their plan B, a way around the potential ban, or which app they may jump to next if the axe does fall on TikTok.
I feel comfortable right now with where TikTok is. We got there's a message that was just sent out by the general manager saying that we're fine and we're going to be moving forward, and I really believe that and am feeling really supported by TikTok. If it does, a lot of people are talking about going to Instagram and things like that.
He's hopeful he can keep making videos on the app where he's built a loyal following. Toby Muse, CGTN, Washington.
Meanwhile, in London, the big screen has undergone big changes, and as independent cinemas reopen, socially distanced seating has also been introduced to limit the risk of spreading the coronavirus.
Feature presentation starts soon.
Titles here started rolling earlier this month, but currently this is one of the few independent cinemas in London to have reopened.
I'm an East Ender, and I couldn't not open the doors when we were allowed to open the doors. As a big pillar of the community, we want to show people a way out of the terrible times we've had, and to show people that there is an escapism and a road back to normality.
Tyrone says measures like temperature checks and pick-and-mix gloves keep people safe. And of course, there's socially distant seating.
The big screen has undergone big changes. Before the pandemic, you'd be sitting shoulder to shoulder with people watching the latest release. Now in this cinema, there is enough space for people to be sitting in front of you, but the seats next to you will be left empty.
Business hasn't been easy.
It's tough. I don't think people realise when you're running the business, they think if you shut the doors, you turn the tap off, it's all okay. You know, you're probably losing sort of £50,000–60,000 a month every month you're closed.
Many cinemas haven't opened until now because they've got no new films to show. And major releases have been delayed because cinemas are shut. An awkward catch-22.
We knew from the international markets, notably China, that it wasn't going to be as simple as just flicking a switch and everyone's going to come back. You know, we're kind of operating in a whole new market now, and it is going to take time, and it's going to be a bit messy at first. The bigger studio films, obviously, they have to evaluate, you know, the international territories and the international markets and really what is viable for them.
The pandemic has led to a resurgence in drive-in cinemas.
There is a saying that throughout recessions and on the way out of recessions, guests want bread and circus, I think was the old saying. So it basically means people need to eat, and people need to be entertained, and people need to escape.
Here, meals are delivered on wheels and film audio played through car radios. It may be an old school way of watching a film, but it's a new way of offering both entertainment and isolation.
In a pandemic, it's a great way of still being able to go out and have entertainment, but it's still a novelty to do and something a little bit different.
I'd love to do it again in the future.
100, yeah.
I think it should be like a regular thing, just like normal.
It's quite like a novelty because it's quite like retro, people are saying, because we're on skates and it's like the old-fashioned American drive-in cinemas.
Here too, they're grappling with a lack of new films. And with blockbusters like Mulan further delayed, the light at the end of the tunnel is looking a little further away. Jemima Walker, CGTN, London.
Well, let's move on now and take a look at commodity markets today. Cocoa prices are expected to weaken by the end of 2020 as COVID-19 curbs demand. Now, London cocoa futures are forecast to end the year 10% down from their current levels as supply prospects for the next season also improve. Meanwhile, gold prices surging to an all-time high today as fears about the economic fallout from rising COVID-19 cases did help to boost demand for the safe haven metal, although of course gains were capped by an uptick in the US dollar. Oil prices falling on fears about the economic fallout from rising COVID-19 cases and of course an oversupply worry as OPEC and its allies are set to wind back their output cuts this August. Well, let's take a short break now, still coming up on the show. Benin craftsmen keep tradition of bronze casting alive.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN. See the difference.
My family has been doing this artwork for the past 600 years.
My dream is to be a leading player in Africa in spice sector.
Nobody in the region consumes it. Even me cannot afford the vanilla cooking.
What we've created here is the elegance, the color, the celebration of life.
Now, the Benin bronzes, which were looted back in 1897 when the British invaded the Kingdom of Benin, are today considered some of Africa's greatest treasures. The craftsmen of Benin are keen to keep the tradition of bronze casting alive. For them, it's a way of life and a way to preserve their heritage for future generations. In the first installment of our special series, we bring you the story of one such artist whose family is associated with this ancient artwork.
For me, bronze casting is a way of life, and we are the one keeping those heritage, because we grow up and we see what our ancestors has done, and to keep it alive, we have to follow suit so that our oncoming children or generation will see what our ancestors has done. I'm Fred Ebuwa. I'm a bronze caster. I'm from Benin, the home of bronze. My family has been doing this artwork for the past 600 years. Right from the time of Obaewaye, it was not making money business. It was only to worship the Oba, to keep events. That's how they were doing it then, because our ancestors then, they wasn't selling it. It had been taken to the palace and to some high-ranking chiefs as a souvenir, as a gift. In our ancestor days, it was just to keep an history, to keep event. Since the ancient Benin, there wasn't writing. They only give mark that so and so time this thing happened. Then the best way to preserve those history was through bronze casting. As for me, I will call myself a craftsman because my ancestors, they were all craftsmen, not an artist. Everything a craftsman does is in his head. You don't need to draw. That's why if you see most craftsmen, they took time to observe things. Like me now, I'll be looking at the shape of my hand. I look at the shape of my hand. Why am I looking at it? If you ask me to mold a hand now, I don't need a sketch of a hand. I just memorize that which I have seen. I'll begin to mold. Today, I will show you the process of how to cast a bronze. I'm going to make an abstract of an Oba head right from the very first stage through the wax process before casting. This is the very first beginning of how to do bronze casting. First and foremost, you have to mold with the wax. Okay, we are done with the wax modeling. We are moved to the next stage, of which is casting. This is the second stage after modeling. We have to cover with the red sand. Now, I'm prepared to bake. Like in the next 2-3 hours, it will be ready for casting. I've just set the furnace to melt the bronze. In 2 hours, all will be liquid. Now, it shows that the brass are fully melted. Once the brass are fully melted, it has a flame on it. And now, we are going to bring out what we are going to cast now. I'm doing the casting now. Aha. Now the bronze has been casted, and we need time for it to cool off so that we can break off the red sand from it. Now it has cooled down. We want to break and take to the next process, that which is filing. After this stage now, we file. Where we are now is like everyone is really struggling in the street. But if there is a support, I think this young one now, they can do better than what our forefather did. But the government, they are not supporting. Because everybody that is doing this craft is just on his own. We hear that the UN people are sponsoring it so that the thing will not die. But none of those things comes to the craftsmen. For the fact that the government is not supporting, everybody is just trying to survive. That's even the reason you are not seeing the best of our artworks now. Because there are bills to pay, there are things to run. If one is bothered or troubled, you cannot see the best of him. But when one is relaxed, I promise you, anytime he brings us a particular art, it will be a masterpiece. Here we go, it's ready. My message to the world is that whosoever that want to keep this heritage should come down to this very place and see for himself.
Well, before we leave you, let's take a quick look at Africa's currencies today. Emerging market currencies retreated as, of course, rising coronavirus cases and concerns over the U.S. economy weighed on investor sentiment. Now, South Africa's rand was amongst the worst performing currencies. It was hurt by increased safe haven demand. The rand slumped to a new 3-week low today in an emerging market rout. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.